Judge Prescott thought he could silence Pam Bondi with a fine. He never expected her to dismantle his argument in front of everyone. The Tampa courthouse had seen its share of legal battles, but this morning, no one could predict the storm about to unfold. Pam, sharp as ever, stepped through the heavy wooden doors, adjusting her blazer. This was supposed to be a routine hearing, one she could argue in her sleep. As she approached the defendant's table, she felt Judge Alan Prescott's eyes on her. Known for his no-nonsense demeanor, he wasn't looking at her face but at the gold cross just below her collarbone. The air shifted. A quiet stillness settled. Then, in a tone as sharp as a gavel strike, he cleared his throat. Miss Bondi, religious symbols have no place in my courtroom. Pam barely blinked. Your Honor, you're wearing a cross. A murmur rippled through the room. The bailiff shifted uncomfortably, and the clerk darted a glance at the judge. This wasn't the first time a judge had asserted control in an unusual way, but a fine over a necklace. Pam didn't move. My cross is no different than a wedding ring or a locket with a family photo. Prescott's face remained unreadable. That's not how I see it. He sighed, already tired of the discussion. Either remove it or face a fine for disregarding courtroom neutrality. Pam folded her hands over her briefcase, her expression cool. She wasn't about to let this go. Your Honor, before we continue, I'd like to address this issue formally. Prescott smirked. Miss Bondi, this hearing is about a business dispute, not your personal grievances. Pam didn't flinch. And I'm aware the First Amendment doesn't take a recess for personal opinions. That got his attention. He leaned back slightly, eyes narrowing. The court reporter's fingers hovered over the keyboard. The room was now on edge. Pam knew she was walking a fine line, but backing down wasn't an option. You're fining me for wearing a cross. Let's break that down legally. Prescott exhaled, rubbing his temples, but before he could respond, Pam was already reaching into her briefcase. She wasn't just going to argue, she was about to dismantle his entire premise. Judge Prescott had no idea how deep a hole he had just dug. Pam pulled out a single sheet of paper, placing it on the table with deliberate precision. She let the silence stretch before speaking. Your Honor, what legal precedent are you basing this fine on? The room fell silent. The court reporter waited. The bailiff barely moved. Prescott let out a slow breath. This courtroom operates under my authority, Miss Bondi. Pam nodded. It does. But that authority is not above the Constitution. She tapped the paper. Under the First Amendment, personal religious expression is protected when it does not disrupt proceedings. The judge scoffed. You're an attorney, not a law professor. Pam smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Then let's talk case law. She lifted the paper. Tinker v. Des Moines, 1969. Established individuals do not shed constitutional rights when they enter a government institution. West Virginia State Board of Education v. Barnett, 1943. Compelling individuals to hide personal beliefs violates the First Amendment. She set the paper down. Now, Your Honor, would you like me to continue, or would you prefer to reconsider that fine? Prescott's fingers tapped against the armrest. He was cornered, and he knew it. But his pride wouldn't let him concede. This is not a religious debate. Pam tilted her head. Then why did you make it one? A few quiet gasps broke out in the courtroom. Prescott's face darkened. Enough. His voice was sharp, but his authority was slipping. Pam leaned forward, her voice steady. With all due respect, Your Honor, I'll stop. When I hear a legal justification for this fine. A long pause. Then, finally, the judge sighed. Mark the fine as pending review. Pam smirked. I'll take that as a temporary victory. But this wasn't just about a fine anymore. The real fight was just beginning. The tension in the room didn't dissipate. If anything, it thickened. Prescott expected quiet compliance, not a constitutional challenge. Every set of eyes was glued to her, waiting. Prescott shifted. Courtroom rules exist for a reason. Pam didn't let up, like wedding bands, or the lapel pins you allow. Prescott's jaw tightened. Or the time you allowed a defense attorney to wear a pink ribbon for breast cancer awareness. More murmurs from the spectators. Pam had just exposed his selective enforcement. She crossed her arms. Tell me, Your Honor, why does this rule apply only to my cross? Prescott's fingers curled around the edge of his desk. He had enforced an unwritten rule out of personal bias, and now it was crumbling. Silence stretched. Pam didn't need to gloat. The courtroom absorbed the reality of the situation. Then, the final blow. If you stand by this fine, I will file an appeal before the ink dries. And I guarantee, this case will make headlines. Prescott's nostrils flared. His ego battled cold, hard reality. Pam held his gaze. Then, at last, he exhaled sharply. The fine is rescinded. Pam smiled. Much appreciated, Your Honor. But this wasn't just about her. The fallout was just beginning. The courtroom was no longer a legal battleground, it was a spectacle. The court reporter knew this transcript would circulate beyond this room. The clerk, initially uneasy, now glanced at Pam with a hint of admiration. Prescott straightened his papers as if he could erase the moment. Outside the courthouse, the reaction was swift. A reporter, covering another case, caught wind of what had happened. Within an hour, a news site had posted the headline, "Florida Judge Attempts to Fine Attorney for Wearing a Cross, It Doesn't Go as Planned." Pam's phone buzzed. Journalists, colleagues, law school classmates, everyone wanted details. But she wasn't interested in headlines. She had a bigger fight ahead. The Florida Bar Association issued a neutral yet telling statement. Judges maintain courtroom decorum, but attorneys have personal expression rights. We trust the system to navigate these matters fairly. Pam let out a slow breath. This was a warning. Lauren, her assistant, walked in. You need to see this. She handed Pam a printed complaint. Prescott had filed a formal grievance against her. The accusation, disrupting courtroom proceedings and engaging in behavior unbecoming of an officer of the court. Pam let out a short, humorless laugh. Unbecoming. That's rich. Lauren sighed. It's retaliation. Pam nodded. Prescott was trying to flip the narrative. Instead of him being the judge who overstepped, he was making Pam the reckless attorney who challenged authority. A common tactic, turn the accuser into the accused. But he had miscalculated. Pam was not about to let that happen. What's the process? She asked. Lauren hesitated. You have 10 days to respond. If it moves forward, they'll conduct a formal review. Pam smiled. And who oversees that review? A panel of judges and senior attorneys. Pam's smirk deepened. Prescott thought he could bury this quietly. He was wrong. Pam picked up her phone and called Lisa Reynolds, a veteran legal journalist. Lisa, I need you to listen carefully. She laid out everything, Prescott's fine, his retaliation. Lisa didn't hesitate. I'm running this. Pam's voice was firm. I need it public before they spin it. Lisa was already on it. Tomorrow's segment. Consider it done. By morning, the story exploded. Headlines everywhere. Florida judge tries to punish attorney over a cross, now he's under fire. Legal analysts shredded Prescott's logic. The Judicial Review Board announced they would investigate his conduct. Pam leaned back, sipping her coffee. Prescott had lost where it mattered most, his credibility. Lauren walked in, holding her phone. Prescott just made a statement. Pam pressed play. The judge stood outside the courthouse, stiff. I respect the review process, he said. Pam almost laughed. He was trying to save face. But the damage was done. Every attorney in his courtroom now knew, he had tried to silence someone. And lost. Pam exhaled. We won. Lauren smirked. Oh, I know. Pam set her coffee down. She hadn't just fought for herself. She had sent a message. Never let power strip away your rights. Because sometimes, one person standing their ground changes everything.